Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
Are you struggling to conceive? You have options, and at Piedmont Reproductive Endocrinology Group, we'll make sure you have the guidance and support you need. PREG is known for individualized fertility care that's unique to every patient. We take the time to provide a reassuring and empowering experience because we believe that you deserve nothing less. Let us help you on your journey to parenthood. Visit us at pregonline.com to learn more. Get the guidance and support you need at Piedmont Reproductive Endocrinology Group.
Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Hey thinkers, how's it going? It is me, your girl, your host, Elena Grace, and you're listening to another episode of I've Been Thinking. If you are not a longtime listener, if you are indeed a first-time friend, welcome in. I am so glad to have you either way. So thankful that you're here. So today's episode is really, really awesome. It is one I've been so excited to do, something I've been very excited and interesting in sharing about here on the podcast for a long time. And I just had to find the perfect guest to kick us off. And so that's actually a little segue into an announcement. We are going to have another guest with a similar message in the next, probably about a month. So within a few episodes, you're going to be hearing from another guest on a similar topic. But also, that is all because on our Patreon, this episode actually is kicking off a series where I am diving into some kind of alternative perspectives on the institution of Christianity. So this is something I am really excited about and really passionate about. It is scary and thrilling and challenging and just so many good emotions, really, all at the same time. So I hope that if you are not already a Patreon member, you will consider joining. This is for the $5 tier and up, where you can get extra video content every month. This past month, my Patreons have been very gracious and have let me take a little bit of a break. But this month, we're coming back full force, and I am dropping some major bombs on you with this series. This is going to be this month, and then it's probably going to flow like into another month, honestly. But anyway, super excited about that, and I hope that you will consider subscribing so that you get that extra content. Now, today's episode is with the incredible Bethany England Johnson. She is newly married, so she is working on changing that last name to Johnson. So I wanted to include both just in case you know her as one or the other. But she and I are talking a lot about religious trauma, the false beliefs that have been taught to and about women within the institutional Christian church, and then the church hurt that and the trauma that so many of us being those raised within the church, have experienced and have internalized, and how it has developed in us as we grow into adulthood, right? So this is a super, super interesting, heavy episode. I'm gonna trigger warning, like if church hurt, religious trauma, the the second coming of Jesus, all of those things, if those are triggering for you, this might not be the episode for you. It turned out that it was way more triggering for me than I even expected as I was recording it. I mean, I was sitting here like crying as we recorded, and then I had to like take some time afterwards, and I was like, these are some really big emotions that I did not know I was still dealing with, So anyway, it could be something that is really upsetting, but at the same time, it could be something that really helps you. So think about it. If you are afraid that this isn't the episode for you, that is totally fine. But if you decide to listen, I hope that it helps you. And I also hope that this could maybe challenge or encourage some people to see things from a different perspective. Consider the way they go about things, consider the way those around them go about things, and hopefully help some people grow, people on all sides of this, potential experience. I hope it helps people grow. I hope it helps people think critically. I hope it helps us see others in a new way. So, with that being said, here is Bethany.
My name is Bethany Johnson. Newly Johnson. I got married in November, so I'm in the midst of getting my last name changed. It's a process.
Congrats.
I am I've pulled a few hats. Thank you. Yes, I'm a personal trainer and also a social media virtual assistant. Both are my businesses. I love to do the social media virtual assistant side, and that kind of segues into the platform I have on Instagram and YouTube of what I'm doing right now as a content creator. So that's kind of a little snippet of the things that I do.
Oh no, I accidentally muted myself.
Oh no!
I was like, that was a really long pause. Like, we're not going to be okay, but that was it. That was the problem.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
That's okay. I was thinking the same thing.
Good. I am also a weirdly multifaceted person. Like when I tell people my interests and kind of what I do, they're always like, "What? Why do you do all those weird random things?" I'm like, "'Cause I love it."
Yes.
But
exactly. Yes, 100%.
So tell us about the content that you do create on Instagram and YouTube, because you have a very specific niche, and that's why you're here today.
Yes, I talk a lot about the false beliefs taught to women inside of the church, and on YouTube, I do that through I have 3 segments that I talk about, and it's church chats, church horror stories, and cringy Christian content. And religious trauma and the memories that go along with anything church related, it's very, very deep and can also be quite dark. So I use the cringy Christian content as the humor behind religious trauma. And that's so helpful for my personality. I deal with a lot of things via humor. And so I think I do attract a lot of that same genre of people. But on my Instagram, I definitely dive further into, I wouldn't say further, but I dive into the biblical, quote unquote, right things that you should do as a Christian. I don't necessarily label myself as a Christian anymore, but I relay the message to teenage women, early adult women, that the things that you're taught in church and by Christian people of finding your worthiness in purity and finding your worthiness in being this good wife and this good mom, that's not where you find your worth, actually. And the the belief that when you're born you are automatically a sinner and you're automatically a worthless human, that's also not accurate, and that's not the truth, the ultimate truth. So I don't want to say I so much debunk, because I don't really debunk. I just allow women in particular to know that there are other ways of believing in yourself, and that is okay, because you ultimately have your own ultimate capital truth. Because in church we were raised to believe that the Bible was, and God, the Word of God was capital T, truth. Like, the Word of God was truth, and that was it. But in all reality, you are your ultimate truth, and that in itself is a controversy with inside the church, and that could be a whole different conversation. But that is what I put out on social media.
I love that. And that is what brought me to you. That's how I found you. And that is what attracted me to you, and like what brought me to follow you. Because I think it is so important. And it's been something that has been really difficult for me. Kind of unlearning and dealing with a lot of that trauma. That we don't realize is being put on us even as children.
Oh, absolutely.
A friend of mine is really incredible about talking about her religious trauma and a lot of the things that she has talked about with me, because she was actually raised in a more, a more evangelical, I guess, household than even I was. Like, I was raised Southern Baptist. We were in the church. Like my grandfather was one of the trustees, like, who originally built the physical building. Like, very much a part of the church. My mom is the church secretary. My aunt is the treasurer. Like, they're both Sunday school teachers, like, very much a part of the church. But I never realized a lot of the trauma that was put on me. And at the same time, I'm so grateful for a lot of the things that my family, especially my mother and my aunt and my dad, like, I have to give them a lot of credit for the ways that they think outside of the box of the way that we are typically taught as Southern Baptists. Like, I was told as a little girl, when I asked, why can't women be preachers? My dad told me because one of the apostles specifically was particularly sexist. He was like, that's literally it, and that's how it got in the Bible. He was like, you can't tell me any other way. So, like, I'm really grateful that that they broke the mold in a lot of ways for me. But still, I had a lot of trauma, like that classic, do you know without a shadow of a doubt that you're not going to burn in hell for eternity, and you're like 9 years old, and that's the most terrifying thing in the world to be asked. Yeah, so there's still, and I realized a lot of my anxiety actually came from that throughout my life. And like I'm medicated now for anxiety, and that's where a lot of it began, was with that church trauma that I just didn't know how to deal with, and I didn't know that that's what it was. So that is why it's become so important to me to start sharing about that and about deconstructing some of the things that I have been taught over the years and kind of been brought into. And that's really why I wanted to bring you on today to share your perspectives on that.
Absolutely. I was raised evangelical to the T. If it wasn't in the Bible, it was wrong. If it was written in the Bible, like I was saying before, it was the ultimate truth, and we were verse by verse just Christians. And I was raised believing that number, like you were saying, it was just like number, like that was right. Like any way other than, which, side note here, I do know that every religious, I don't want to say every religious group, but there are religions out there that is totally fine. Not dogging on anybody's belief system by any means necessary. Because now I understand that you can have that belief. Can I cuss on here? Is that
yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay, great. Okay. So, somebody can have a religious belief and not be a total asshole about it. And I was raised being that mean girl, asshole Christian, that it was either God's way or you're going to hell, and I cannot be any part of your life if you are a sinner. And my headphones just said low battery, so that's fun. So I now know that you can have any type of belief and not be a dick about it. Totally cool, not dogging on religion. However, the church in particular that I was raised in was, coming out of it, very, very culty and just a red flag of a church. So a lot of my experiences came from the things that I was taught inside of this particular church. Not saying that's every single Christian's experience, because I've heard it all on Instagram. That's not what I, was taught. Then, like, don't look at my shit then. It's not for you. So I understand that not everybody has had this experience, and that's totally fine. I'm talking to the women in particular who have had the experiences, like you just said, of having the traumas of, oh my God, am I going to die in the middle of the night, and then have an unspoken sin that I didn't know was a sin, but God does, and now I'm going to hell. That type of fear every single day of your life. And there were things in particular where my mom would pretend that the rapture had taken place, and she would lay her clothes out like we were all taught, the second coming of the Lord. She would lay her clothes out in a way of it looking like she had just been, just taken. So I'd come home from school and see her clothes, and obviously like, Mom, where are you at? And then I'd go all around the house, outside, whatever, try to find her. And then all of a sudden she appears from nowhere, and she's like, hey, were you scared that the rapture took place? I'm like, well, no shit. Like, your clothes are right there, and that's what I've been taught my whole life, And she was like, well, if there was a fear that you wouldn't be in the rapture, then there's stuff in your heart that we need to get, like, out into the open. We need to fix, essentially. Like, your heart's not right with God if you had a fear that this happened and you weren't there. And I'm like, this was middle school, so what is that? Like 11, 12, 13. And those fears all the time. And I
Yeah.
remember going to sleep that what my mom would always tell me, that if, we would have prayers at night, please forgive me of all of my sins and all of the things that I didn't think were sins that are sins, trying to cover all the bases. And that was to protect me from another thing my mom would always say was, if the rapture came in the middle of the night and your heart is not right with God, me and your dad are going to be gone. So you might wake up without parents. And so me, as a fucking child going to sleep, I'm like, oh my God, am I going to wake up and my parents aren't going to be there? So really, when you're going to sleep, you're always like, God, forgive me my sins, forgive me my sins, forgive me my sins, before you even go to sleep, because you're afraid you're going to wake up without parents. Like, I laugh at it now because of how ridiculous it is, but it's so traumatic. Me saying that out loud is like, I don't want my children to think that I'm not going to be there when they go to sleep. Like, no, ma'am. No. So the traumas are real, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely not. Like, oh my gosh, I am heartbroken for you that you went through that. That is awful. And thankfully, while thank God my mom didn't do anything like that to me, but I did still have that fear, and it was put into me by pastors and youth leaders and all of those things, that you have to be afraid and you have to be scared. Like, what if I'm asleep, and what if I dream something that's a sin and I go to bed, or what if I don't? I mean, I was literally praying like every 15 minutes, God, please forgive me, because I was so 100%. Scared.
And every altar call, you're up there. And so the evangelical, I was raised in a Pentecostal church, so it would be a weird service if people weren't falling out in the Holy Spirit. Quotes around the Holy Spirit, because really, like, what the hell is that? And then people running around the church. Like, it's weird if we got out at church at, like, actually noon, because, that's just how it was. An interpretation of tongues and speaking in tongues. But the thing is that really gets me still today is like, I was so into that, and speaking in tongues and laying hands on the sick and they are healed and all of those things, which there's a spiritual side to all of that, not a Christian side, but a spiritual side. But anyway, that's another conversation. But I was the one laying my hands on the sick and, like, speaking in tongues. But then now I'm like, what in the actual hell was that? Like, what was coming out of my mouth? And the rest of, well, I don't want to say the rest of my siblings, a few of my siblings are still heavily in the Pentecostal church, and my father is. My mom passed away actually 10 years on the 31st, so a lot of the traumas that I do have was from the church I was raised in, and my mom in particular. But I always say on my YouTube channel, I was like, I might be, calling out a lot of the shit that my mom did, but there is not an ounce of me that's talking poorly about my mom, because she also did what she thought she had to do in order for me to get to heaven, so that wasn't so much a manipulative, gross thing. She was just trying to get me not to go to hell. So I have to hold that perspective inside too. And but the church that I did go to was more just gross than trying to not get me to go to hell. But anyway, Yeah, so all of this deconstruction, I'm sure we'll get onto this topic, so I'll just kind of segue into that. But um how I
Absolutely.
got into this deconstruction world is I have always had this knowing inside of me since middle school that I was going to run my own business and I was going to help women. So in that little baby Bethany mindset, I was like, yeah, in the church. I'm gonna do something in the church. So when I graduated high school, I became a quote unquote youth sponsor, for the girls in the youth. And I
Right.
love teenagers. There is something inside of me that is so drawn to teenagers and early adults. I'm 30, so around the 20-30 age. Um, Ever since middle school, I've always been drawn to that. So that tells me that God, whatever higher power we all believe in now, I still don't know, but I believe something is out there. I'm not, completely atheist, which not saying anything against that by any means, but it's like I still believe spirituality, something, man, something's
Yeah.
out there. So when I do pray, I still refer to the name God, even though I'm not really talking to the God I grew up believing. Okay. So in middle school, I had this, really, really belief that I was going to work with these women. And so when I graduated, I started working with a youth sponsor. Um, and then I ended up getting kicked out of being a youth sponsor because I was my best friend's DD during her bachelorette party.
Stop.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
True story, man. True story. I had an ex-boyfriend who was still going to the church at the time, and he called me up and he was like, "Hey, just letting you know, like, people are talking inside the church about like what happened." And I was like, "There's literally nothing that I didn't drink. We went to one club, and I drove her home so she wouldn't die. You know what I mean? Like, okay,
Right.
neat." So I went ahead and called up the youth pastor, and I was like, "Hey, man, I just want to smooth things over real quick. This is what happened." Because me and my best friend were both raised inside this church, and she wasn't going to this church at the time, so everybody knew her as a heathen, of course, like one would.
Of course, yes.
And yeah, I talked to him and I was like, "Hey, just let you know, this is what happened. You might hear something different. I just want to smooth it over." Well, he told me that I needed to come down to his office, and sit and talk to him about what happened. And I was like, "Cool," because like I already did. And
Right.
I think he was trying to get more out of me, and he proceeded to tell me that alcohol, quote unquote, I mean, quote, like, alcohol is the devil. And I'm like, "Man, I'm not playing this game. Like, you're absolutely wrong." And that's no. So, anywho, that's a real story. And so I was no longer a youth sponsor after that, which really pushed me out of the church. And I well, we were talking about different facets that we have. So in college, I was a kinesiology major and I was also a music major. So I ran into two completely different spaces in college.
Right.
And so I was heavily into the praise team. And not tooting my own damn horn, but I can play, anything that's up on stage. So I would
Love it.
let the praise team leader know, "Hey, man, if you need somebody to," because I was doing it for the youth group, and I was like, "If you need somebody to fill in on anything, literally let me
Right.
know. Like I'll help you out." And there were so many Sundays I'd stand in the back with my dad because he was, like you were saying, heavily inside the church. So he was both a deacon and head of security at the church.
Wow.
And so many Sundays they would go without a vocalist, they would go without a pianist, they would go without a drum set player, they would go without a bassist, and I'm just standing there like,
because they refused to ask you.
Yes, and I still feel that. And oh man, it still hurts my heart. And my dad would ask me like, "Why didn't they ask you?" And I'm like, I don't know, but I do know because they don't agree with who I'm hanging out with. And that, man, still really hurts because I know how capable I am in doing those things, but because of my decisions, they did not want any part of me. So that is when I stopped going to that particular church.
That is so interesting to me, for so many reasons. Mm-hmm. But something that really stands out to me, so I want to say first, I get absolutely what you're saying about you still pray, you still believe, because I still very much identify with Jesus Christ and who he truly is and was, right? But I don't identify as a Christian necessarily.
Okay.
But that's really scary at the same time, is not identifying as a quote unquote Christian, because you think like, well, shit, what if I do go to hell? Mm-hmm. And then I still do pray.
Yeah, that fear is still real.
Oh, so real. But I still do pray. And I have been working on praying to the Creator, because I do believe that there is a greater power and that it is a creator. I don't necessarily believe that it is a male or female entity, because why would we put a gender on something that is so much larger than all of us and anything we can comprehend? Like, there's so much bigger, and there's so much that I am working on and working through and still figuring out. But I just wanted to, throw that in. But if they were truly Christians and they were truly following who Jesus Christ is and was, and even just who he was in his life here on earth, they would have invited you in. Even if they didn't agree with you, they would have invited you in and used your given talents to make you a part of the church, Like, that is how it should be done, rather than ostracizing you and just damning you to hell and just saying, well, we don't want that one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I knew, though I was hurt, well, still am, kind of, actually.
Yeah.
Good thing to bring up to my therapist, Though I still am hurt about it, I also knew that they were wrong. I also knew that they were so wrong. And in saying all of that, I stopped going to church, and I was very confused as to not so much what to believe, because I still was a Christian, I still believed all of that. That was years ago. Excuse me. And I started, fast forward a few years, I started dabbling in life coaching, because I was like, oh my God, this is totally the thing that I've known since middle school that's going to help so many women. So I started dabbling in that, and I created a course. It was called Manifested Mindset. And within that course, I broke down, because I also started learning more about law of attraction and manifestation. And I was like, this shit's in the Bible. Like, what are we doing? And
it absolutely
so I created
is.
a course all around how Yeah, 100%. And I created a course on the scriptures, like breaking down the scriptures that had to do with law of attraction and manifestation, and how as a Christian you are 100% manifesting when you're praying for something. But Christians are like, oh my God, new age, oh my God, it's satanic. And I'm like, fucking no, it's in the Bible. And what was the
Yeah.
scripture that I did use? Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe you have received it and it shall be yours. I'm like, that's manifestation.
Literally,
What
it
are
is.
you doing? So I was so grateful in the amount of women who, number one, took the course and they were like, oh my God, like, I'm so happy that you created this, because I've been sitting on this whole believing energy is real thing and believing manifestation is real, but I also believe in God, but my family keeps saying that energy isn't real. You know, that whole
Yes.
controversy. But then I stopped resonating with the Bible because I took a spiritual hiatus because of this death that happened of an ex of mine last May, actually. And it was a very, very abusive relationship, physically, emotionally, mentally.
I'm sorry to hear that.
All the abuses that you can think of. He covered them all. Yeah, it was really hard. And excuse me, he ended up passing away due to alcoholism. And I really, really struggled with that spiritually, because my sister told me, and I will be 100% transparent here. My sister told me, well, I really hope that his heart was right with God before he died. And the first thing that popped in my head was like, I hope it wasn't. Like, I truly hope it wasn't.
I understand.
But then, yeah, and then I started to really question, like, okay, God, listen, I have always been taught that if you are a fucking wreck as a person here on earth, in your last breath, you say, God forgive me, you're automatically good to go, no consequences in heaven. I really struggled with that, and I was like, fuck that.
I
don't
do
believe
too.
it. I can't. I cannot believe it because of the shit that man did. And, yes, alcohol had a lot to do with it. However, he still did those things. So I'm like, God, I can't
He still
believe.
made those decisions.
Exactly. I'm like, I cannot believe that that if he did say, okay, Jesus forgive me, all of a sudden there's zero consequences. I do not believe that at all. And I mean, I took a while off of social media. I don't want to say I got into a dark place. I don't want to say that. It was mostly of like, what's happening? Like, what do I believe in? And so in that time, I started wanting to create I wanted to start life coaching again, and I wanted to create another course again. And this was going to be all about body image. Okay, so it was mostly like Christians and body image, right? Because,
right.
let's be honest, a lot of Christian women have body image issues, right?
Absolutely.
Which I am 100% certain every woman does, but I feel is very prominent in their Christian community. And I was standing right in my kitchen And I was like, okay, because I have my meditation music on. When I create something, I mean, it is a clear, energetic space. Like, I am
Love
one
it.
with myself, and I'm like, okay, let's do this thing. And it hit me out of the fucking blue. I stood here, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I stood here, and the first thought was, oh my God, Christian women have body issues because we have always been taught to cover up. Those were the
Yeah.
beliefs that we were taught within the church, that we were taught to cover up because covering up equals good and not covering up equals bad. And my whole world in that discovery just fucking crumbled. Like, everything
Right.
that I believed to be true was no longer true for me, because I finally found out that there were so many false beliefs taught to women inside of the church, and then here we are.
Right. No, I think that that is such an important realization. And I think we all come to it in different ways. Some of us come to it by finding your content. But there is so much pressure put on the way that we dress as women in the church. There's so much just objectification of women.
Oh my God, absolutely.
And that's why so many Christian women, I
Yes,
agree
and it
so much, and it is so hard to come out of.
100%. Absolutely, because I really, really got deep in, and that's when I decided to write a book about the false beliefs taught to women inside of the church, which I'm still working on. But it's so it's
Can't
oh
wait.
my God, me either. I'm so excited. um, and the segment of the quote unquote church chat that I do get into on my YouTube channel are chapters within the book. So we take a deep dive into Proverbs 31 and how just, I don't want to say just awful, but it gives a an outline of honestly why Christian women in particular are so fucking tired all the time, and they just quote unquote don't have time to do anything because of how we were raised to serve, 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 that if we take time for ourselves, that it's selfish. And there was a scripture that my mom would always say, the what was it? It's
Yes.
idle hands. Paraphrasing, I think, is idle hands is the devil's playground. And then my mom would always say, you get in trouble when you're bored. So we never sat. We never relaxed.
Yeah.
There was no time to mental health anything, because if somebody needed it, you had to do it, and the word no was not in your vocabulary, because if you say no, that's selfish, and no, fuck that.
Yeah, fuck that.
I love the word no. It is my favorite word. It saves you from so much goddamn stress. And obviously, like, don't be a dick about it, but like, if you feel stressed if someone asking you to pick your kid up while you just like no, like no. So all of these things, it's like a
Yeah, like, no, that's not my job.
exactly.
That's not
Yeah,
for me.
exactly. And it's I my one of my older sisters is still heavily in the church, and she is so busy all of the time, and it just reminds me of how we grew up and how we were raised, of just going, 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 going all the time, to where it would physically, and still does physically, make me sick because of the lack of sleep, the lack of self-care that you have. You can't have time for yourself because you're around so many people all the time. Like, you cannot do that. But self-serving isn't quote unquote in the Bible, so it's not talked about. Only service is talked about. And like, no wonder why Christian women are so tired all the time and so busy all the time. And two, being busy is also a coping mechanism for a lot of trauma. That was a coping mechanism for me when I didn't know how to grieve the death of my mom. Um, so that's when I needed to go to therapy, because I didn't know how to emotion. Still learning, but a lot better than what I was. Um, so that really opened up a lot of doors to the false beliefs, because then I was like, okay, God, okay, creator, okay, like, whatever. Like, tell me, like, allow me to see the different false beliefs. And it poured out of me. And I was very, very scared and a little bit stand backish of putting it on social media, because of the backlash that I knew from the small town I was raised in, that would inevitably happen. But then I got to a point where I was like, you know what? Because when I first started putting content on Instagram about the false beliefs taught to women inside the church, I had so many women that went to the same church that I did, who confided in me and said, hey, this is exactly what happened to me, or gave me a different story. And they're like, this is why we had to leave that particular church. And it baffles me. And it also confirms what I'm seeing, because just doesn't, has happened to me. It's happened to multiple women. And so now that I'm more prominent on Instagram now about it, and very, very vocal about it now, and the beliefs that I do have, my DMs get, I don't want to say flooded, because that sounds super cocky and gross, but there are a lot of women who do reach out asking for advice over something that is going on in their life, or they're like, oh my God, thank you. Like, these are the, and then it just confirms that little middle school Bethany, like, this is the shit. Like, this is what I am supposed to be doing. And
oh no, you cut out.
Hey guys, so we had actually a ton of technical issues during the course of this episode. So unfortunately at this point, Bethany actually cut out, and we got her back, we got reconnected, all of that stuff, but we were just having so many issues that we decided to go ahead and wrap the episode at this point, unfortunately. But don't worry, because we're going to get back together. We're going to work together again. So you are going to hear so much more on this subject. Do not worry. So here is Bethany finishing up with her whole situation, telling you guys a little bit more about her, where to find her, her content, all of that stuff. And then I will be right back, dropping back in to remind you where to find the podcast so that you can keep up with me.
I know, it's really sad. I was enjoying our conversation so much, too.
I know. It was great.
It was like a little therapy session for me, also.
Well, damn it.
Damn it. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, just tell us, tell us where to find you and all of that, and then, that way my listeners can find you, and start consuming some of your content, hopefully.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Bethany Michael, Michael _. And you can also find me at the same name on YouTube. And I think mostly what will come up are cringy Christian content videos. So it's freshly new. I think I have like 100 or 99 or 100 subscribers now. So it's very, very new, but growing. But yeah, you can find all of those, and I have a podcast as well.
Yes,
it's called the
do.
Manifested Life Podcast, and that's on Pandora, all of the places where you can, the
All
big
the
places
places.
where you can find podcasts. That's where I hang out. Yeah, all the places.
Perfect. I will link all of that for the listeners so they can find you, they can get more into your content, and then they can hang out and wait for your book.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Oh, me too. I'm so excited for you. Well, Bethany, thank you so much for coming on today. And I'm sorry about the technical problems, but we will get it worked out and you will be back another day.
Yes, I look forward to it. Just let me know, and we can continue this wonderful conversation.
Wonderful, cathartic. It has been so good. I'm sure that I am going to get some eye rolls and some roasts in my hometown and at my home church too. So
Yes,
yeah,
I'm here for it.
I love it. I live for it. I love the chaos. I love the drama. So here we are.
Yes, the good drama.
The good drama. Well, thank you so much again. I'm so grateful for you coming on and sharing your perspective and your story with us. It has been so awesome.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me. I look forward to coming back on again. And it was fun talking to you. And I'm sure we'll get deeper in the next conversation. And I look forward to it.
Okay, thinkers, this is the end. I just want to remind you guys, as always, you can find us at I've Been Thinking Pod on Instagram. I have completely forgotten about Twitter, so YOLO. And www.ivebeenthinkingpod.com. You can find the blog, all the resources, etc., everything on there. There will also be links to all of Bethany's media, content, all of her stuff will be on the blog post for today's episode, so you can find all of her there. And then as well, we do additional blog posts, kind of following along with the theme of recent episodes and just kind of whatever's going on in my life. So go check that out. And then finally, if you're not already, go check out the Patreon. I get it if you can't subscribe. Times are tough. But if you can, I would be so grateful. And you get tons of extra content. So it's a win-win. Okay, guys. Thank you again so much for being here. I love you. And I'll talk at y'all next time. Bye.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
Between aging and busy lifestyles, many women struggle with maintaining their physical and mental wellness. At Aquavita Concierge Healthcare Services for Women, we can help you revitalize your health and reclaim your life. We start from within by balancing your hormones, allowing your body to achieve and maintain desired weight goals. We also specialize in peptide therapies, regenerative medicine, sexual health, and aesthetics in our state-of-the-art facilities. Feel better, look better, live better at Aquavita. Visit aquavitality.com and begin your journey today.